Hello and welcome to this bite-sized episode of Life Lessons with me, Simon Mundie, in which we revisit a nugget from one of my previous conversations and have a closer look. Would you like to know some tips for succeeding under pressure from someone who was one of the best in the business? Sir Nick Faldo is Britain's greatest ever golfer, a 6 times major winner who spent 97 weeks as world number 1 in his pomp. During our full-length conversation, I asked him about one of his strategies for success, which comes down to being able to slow down. Something else that I heard you do as well was putting yourself under pressure. So hadn't you been aware that skiers, so biathletes, basically they would get their heart rate up and would have to bring it right down, and you would intentionally create this sort of pressure situation for you. So how did you do that, and how valuable a process is putting yourself under pressure like that in a training scenario? So my pro Ian Connolly said this. He said, these biathletes can actually lower their heart rate because obviously they're skiing like crazy, and then you've got to stop and lower it so you can shoot. And so again, it was like me, okay, so how do I do that? And so that's from my ear, tempo and rhythm was so important in your golf swing. So I went down and obviously I then started, well, how do you swing in like slow motion? How can you slow it down? And so you got to slow your breathing down. So, nobody said to me how to slow my breathing down. I guess I must have just done this by experimenting. So where do you, can you slow yourself down? So literally you walk slower, you're breathing slower, you can tell, you're talking slower, and I could swing slower. And, that was, so important. I developed that where as an amateur, when you used to play in amateur tournaments, there was no leaderboards in those days. So the only way you knew you were leading was the members used to come out and start watching you. And then they'd begin, I say, who is this Faldo chap? And so I thought, I must be leading. And so I was able to intentionally slow everything down, and I would survive and carry on playing well rather than getting faster. That stood me very well. Would you recommend that then for anyone who struggles with pressure in day-to-day life, just Absolutely. Consciously slowing things down? Well, so we know now. I had doctors come to me and wire me up and all sorts of things. Excuse me. And, the bottom line, it's still, if you breathe in for 5, so you learn to sit quietly, and you can do this at a car, at the traffic lights. So when you're having a stressful day, just look at the red lights and then just and the lower you breathe, and you've got to learn breathe from your left diaphragm. So bottom line, you breathe, pushing your belly out. So everybody's the opposite. So when you breathe in, everybody sucks their belly in, don't they? Right? And so it's in the top of your chest. So as you know, if you breathe in while you push your belly out, then you suck up all the air, and then you breathe out. You breathe out from the bottom of your belly, and you push the air out through your lungs. It's it's just simple to sit there quietly. And again, it's amazingly powerful. You do that 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. And I did this whole kind of study where this doctor came to the house, and it was really clever because he taught me to breathe like that, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds in. And then he would agitate your mind and start telling you, I'm going to do this really difficult mathematical equation. It's going to be really difficult. Your mind will not be able to handle it. It's going to be, so difficult. You won't believe how that, and so my heart rate would go up because I was monitored just sitting in the chair because he's winding me up. He's telling me how difficult this mathematical equation is going to be, and And then at the end of it, they then go, and he does this with businessmen. He then goes, "What's your name?" And people go, They can't even say their own name. He's wound them up that much. Says, spell your name or something, and they can't do it. So it's fascinating how the mind just completely controls you. So I would go out on the golf course and he would try to get me in because how do I know sometimes I'm going to chip in? Because as golfers, we kind of know, like I get over a chip shot and I look at it and I think, I like this, fancy that, and I chip it in. And Fanny Susan, she said, I knew you were going to do that. I said, I knew I was going to do that as well. It's funny how there's a vibe that you can do something. So we tried even wiring me up to see how can you get yourself in that state to really send your visualization up a notch, to turn your beta waves up. So, all those sort of things. So So how would you encourage someone to do that beyond slowing down there, to get into that place where you have utmost belief?
Utmost belief. Oh, that's a long way.
Well, no, I mean, in terms of like when you stepped up and we thought, okay, and Fanny would say, "I knew you were going to do that," and you knew you were going to do it. How do you get into that state?
Yeah, well, that's a huge circle of. So I try to keep it simple. My circle was, look, if I practice hard, and then I go off into a tournament and I learn from my experience and I assess it, then I come back and practice hard again, and then I go off, and it was the simplest circle as that. I'd practice, prepare, go off and play a tournament, learn from the experience, come back and practice it again. Wow, it couldn't get any simpler than that, does it? There was nothing else in that. So I just kept doing that as an amateur. So obviously I'd go off and play and I'd lose and I'd play badly and that sort of thing and come back. I used to get mad and all that sort of thing. Or actually we used to go into silence. It's so funny. I shot, I don't know, an 84 at Moore Park, the Carris Boys or something, and then Mum drove me home in silence all the way, just in silence. And she always said, well, she thought that was the best way of dealing with things. Don't say anything. This is classic Faldo. Don't say anything. That's our Faldo attitude. So, but I must have learned and be furious for a while, and that's all I try to keep. That's the other. So the best tips now, again, what we've learned after 40, is be factual. When you're lost, when you played lousy, sure you can walk around and, I can't play, I'm lousy, I can't hit a tee shot, I never have, I never will, I can't do this, can't do that. Well, look where your mind and your eyes are going, down in the ground, aren't they? But if you say, okay, right, what happened today? What went wrong? Oh, this thing, oh, I missed 6 fairways in the right rough. Oh, blimey. And then from those 6 fairways in the right rough, I then missed 6 greens in the left rough, in the left bunker. So then you've got a factual plot of what went wrong. So you go, okay, so I got to fix the driving first. How do I stop hitting it in the right rough? So that's when I'd go off and work on it. So I used to say to kids, okay, have a little scream and shout for a few seconds, have a moan, and then stop yourself and go, okay, let's get factual. What has really happened? And I hear that work for me. It's a very simple way of analyzing the round. And then you learn more, then you go to the practice ground, and hopefully you can get your finger on what you want to do as quickly as possible, and you can assess it and go, okay, I'm better, I feel good, and off I go tomorrow. I'm ready for another day.
So having that little emotional outburst and this reflection you could do on anything that goes wrong in life. So really zone in on the facts, what's actually happened, and learn from them rather than getting stuck in the emotional assessment.
Oh, yeah. How many times have you sat with somebody and they've said something or something's happened and you've ranted, or it could be hours, could be days, on the emotion of something, and then somebody goes, oh, no, this is the facts. And you think, what an idiot. I've just spent an hour analyzing this person said that, and I thought this, and they should have done this, and then they go, oh no, this is what happened factually, and you feel, right, Charlie, that you've wasted so much time. So that's one of my little lessons in life. Get cut straight. We all do it. I'm not saying I don't. You do it all the time. You have a rant about something, and you go, oh, that wasn't the facts. So just remember that was one of my little tips for life.
Thank you for listening to this bite-sized episode of the Life Lessons podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, please do feel free to drop me an email via my website, simonmundie.com. And just a reminder that my full-length conversations are now back. They're out every Monday morning.